All right, this is a video for lesson 3.7. It's going to be on parallel lines, but it's going to heavily borrow stuff from lesson 3.6. So if you were absent for that lesson, you do need to look at that lesson first because you'll need to know what the 6 steps are to be able to answer some of these questions later. All right, let's start off with a warm-up though. So we're trying to find a slope for each of these lines here. So ones that start with y equals should be fairly easy to do because it should just be the number in front of the x from y equals mx plus b. So this says 3x, so it should just be 3. 7 minus 5x, don't forget the sign as well. So not just 5, we'd need negative 5. 7x, that should be 7. Negative 2/5. And this should be something that's fairly easy to complete. Negative 9x would be negative 9, and 7/4. If we had something that was in standard form, then it would be important that you go back first and write it into slope-intercept form so you could answer the question just as I did. Second question, write the equation of the line that has a slope of negative 1/2 and passes through the point negative 4, 5. So this would be one. Unfortunately, I don't have a sketch pad here, so I'm not going to be able to draw this one. But this would be one where you'd want to follow these steps out. Like you'd want to take this whole question, start with this, put it as x and y. Write out the slope, just put m equals negative 1/2. Using that rule we just talked about, y equals mx plus b, and then start substituting for each value. So where it says y, I know that y in this question is 5. So I would have 5 equals m is negative 1/2, x is negative 4, and then I'll put plus b. Now, we know part of this line already. So the fact that it says it has a slope of negative 1/2, I know it starts with negative 1/2 x, but unfortunately, so do all of these lines here. Now, I did say that I would be working out negative 1/2 times by, oops, the x. Oh, it didn't like that. Let me try that again. There we go. Times by the x value, which is negative 4. Which gives me 2. So I would have the equation 5 equals 2 plus b. Do the opposite of 2, which is negative 2, and 5 take away 2 is 3. So I can think that it's going to be this answer here. Now, one of the things that we'd also want to check on this is you should type in the line as well. If you think this is the answer, type in this line, type in this coordinate, and just make sure that that line does indeed go through that point. If it does, you can feel pretty confident about your answer. But if you notice that the line does not go through the dot, then obviously don't select that answer because that clearly doesn't meet the question saying that the line has to go through this point. This is the one that should be easier. We are going to follow those 6 steps unless we see something that says undefined slope or something that says 0 slope, and there are special ones. So the u of undefined is in our word vux here. So that tells me my answer is going to be x equals, and then I just look for the x coordinate here, which is 2, and I'm done. So that one's really quick to answer, and one of you don't want to spend too long trying to answer either. Trickier slope questions. Okay, so, well, this one starts with y equals. So the number of x's here, x means 1x, so I know this would be negative 1. Y equals 3, as there's only one letter, I can use Hoy and Vux for this one. So the O is 0. X, I had to do this one because it wouldn't let me type in undefined. But X, just a single letter, so Vux, VUX, so U is undefined. And then for this one, this is where I need a little bit of paper, and you'd have to make these into slope-intercept form first. So this would be y equals negative 5x plus 8, so that would be negative 5. 2x plus 3y equals 6. If you rearrange it, would be y equals negative 2/3 x. So I know this is going to be negative 2/3. And the last one, a little more complicated to do. This would actually be y equals 3/4 x. So I can put 3/4. Now, another way of doing these questions as well is if we're not sure, let me do this one actually. This is probably a better one to do. We can actually type this into, and I'm going to have to move my picture out of the way so we can see. We can actually type in this equation. So 2x plus 3y equals 6. And we can actually, if these are whole numbers, this will be even easier. It is. If not, we're just going to find 2 points that lie on the graph. Let me zoom in just so we can see just that little bit clearer. There we go. So using these 2 points on the graph, I can use rise over rho. So it goes down 2 squares and then across 3 squares, which is also negative 2/3. And that's really convenient, particularly for moments like right now, when I don't actually have any paper and can rearrange these into slope-intercept form. That's a little activity for after we finished, so we're going to move on from that one there. And all the answers were there if you needed to see them. But as we were together, well. Now, we are going to keep building on this objective, finding the equation of a line that passes through 2 points. So we started it last lesson, but we're going to keep going with it today. And most importantly for today, though, is we're going to find the equation of a parallel line given a point and a slope. So reviewing the equation between 2 points. So this is what we started last lesson, and we're going to begin at the start of this lesson here. If we have our 2 points here, notice we can't do the point slope formula because I don't know the slope. So if you're ever trying to write the equation of a line, you don't know the slope, you have to work out what the slope is first. Now I can do this by using the formula, or I could use this by counting squares. So as I have a picture here, I'm going to go with this one here. 1, 2, 3. And there's a lot of little squares here, but I can see that it's going to be 18 because I got 6 to here and 12 to here, which would be 18. So my slope for this line is 3 over 18. And 3 over 18 is, don't want a decimal, so let me change it, 1 over 6. But more importantly for this question initially says, just make sure that you know that it's positive. And then once I worked out that slope, which I already did, I got 1 over 6. But you can also do it by using the slope formula as well if you need to. Let's just make sure that this is coded correctly. It is, so we can keep going now. Then I can follow the steps that I did previously. Use one of the 2 points. I'm going to use this one because I don't like using negative numbers. And then I'm doing just what I did last lesson. Picking out this point, picking out the slope, and then I'm following those steps, find out what the answer is. So let me just move myself out of the way again. There we go. So if we solve this equation with b, we would find the answer is 1. So as we already know that the slope is 1/6, I can say that it's 1/6 x plus 1, and then I can check my answer. This down here is a little typo that I am going to need to fix later. And if we think we have the answer as well, we should type it in. So on previous ones, we typed in the point and then the answer, make sure it goes through 1 point. For this one here, this is actually even easier to check. If it goes through both points, you definitely have the right answer. On the last one, it might pass through the point but have the wrong slope. We said the answer was 1. And there you go. You can see that it clearly goes through the 2 points. So I know that I did this correct. Whereas if I made a little careless mistake, you can see straight away this is not the correct answer. This line does not go through these 2 points, and then you could ignore that answer. All right, so one for people to try here. Finding the slope. This is certainly negative slope. Easier just to use the picture for this one, I think. Down 1, across 5. So I know the answer for this one is going to be negative 1/5 x. Now, I'm going to be interested to see how many people notice this in class. You don't have to do the 6 steps to work out the y-intercept for this question, because you can just look straight at the picture here. You can see that it goes through -7, so my answer would be negative 1/5 x minus 7. And for people who wanted to work it out, I can write my final answer here. Y equals negative 1/5 x. What did I say? Plus 7? I think I said plus 7. Oops, I obviously didn't say plus 7. So let me go back and look. Oh, -7. Whoops. There you go. So sometimes it's important to think about what you're trying to work out. We're trying to find the slope and the intercept. If you can see the intercept, you can just write that down straight away. If not, then you got to work it out using that method from last time. I think this was just a little activity for people that finish earlier, so we're going to move on. And there's the steps more clearly if you need to. And there was an extra one here. Write the equation of the line passing through 2, 7, and 4, 5 with multiple choice. If you have multiple choice answers, this question's much easier. You can literally just check each answer. Does it go through both points? No, no. There we go. That one goes through 2 points. So you know that that's the answer. But just to confirm, that one does not, and neither does that one either. So we're practicing for the worst version of questions when we don't have multiple choice. And then if we do have multiple choice, we can always use an easier method if we need to. So the main part of today's lesson really is this idea about parallel lines. So let's move into this here. So it says drag the slider to make the blue lines parallel to the red lines. So something like that, just to make sure we understand what the definition of parallel lines is at this point. And it says the slope for this line is 3. And if I was to do this for another line like this one over here, you can also see that the slope is 3. I might not quite have got it exactly here because I was doing it by eyesight, which is not perfect. But the correct answer should be that it should have the same slope. And that's the key fact for today's lesson. If you have 2 lines that are parallel, they're going to have the same slope. So in today's lesson, I'm not going to give you the slope. You're going to have to work out the slope. Then once you've done that, then you can use the same thing that you used in the previous lesson to work out the answer. And there's some more examples here just to show you that parallel lines do indeed have the same slope. So really, when I give you an equation today, I'm going to say it's going to be find the equation of a line that is parallel to this line and passes through a certain point. So I didn't tell you the slope directly, but you can work it out just like you did up earlier. So if the slope of this line is 3, the slope of the line parallel to this will also be 3. So literally all we're doing is looking for the slope of this line, and then we're going to pick the same number, and then you're going to follow those same steps that you did last lesson. So let me go back to this question here so we can see it a little bit easier. Write the equation in slope-intercept form that passes through the point negative 4, 5 and is parallel to the graph y equals 1 half x minus 4. So step 1, we write out the coordinate and label it x and y. Step 2, you write out the slope, but they didn't tell you the slope this time. But they did tell you it's parallel to this line. So if the slope of this line is 1 half, then the parallel slope is also 1 half. So step 2 would literally just be writing out m equals 1 half. Once you've done that, you're doing just like you did last lesson. And if you're not sure on that part, go back to lesson 3.6, and that will explain that more thoroughly, how to do that. Same here. Write the equation of slope-intercept form that passes through 5, 1 is parallel to this one. So there's my point, 5, 1. Parallel to this means it has the same slope as this line. So as it says 3/5 x, the slope must be 3/5. And then it's just like you did last lesson. So really today's lesson is really a practice of what you did in the previous lesson as well. Now you can also do these questions graphically as well, but in general, it's easier to do it if you can actually think about what's actually going on. So if we had one where it was a picture like this and it said parallel to this line and goes through this point, you'd actually have to write out what this point is. So I can see that it's 1 on the x-axis and -3 on the y-axis. So I can get my point from here. To find the slope of this line, I would have to do rise over run like we did earlier in the unit. Up 2 and across 1. 2 divided by 1 is 2. And then I got all the stuff that I need for this question. Here's the point in the line the new line is going to pass through. Here's the slope the line is going to pass through. And then I can just do the 6 steps like I did previously. Now, I do want to get to the one that's in standard form as well, because that one's definitely the most complicated version of this question. So what is the slope of the line 3x plus y equals 2? Now, we've got to be careful. We can't just say that it's 3 because it says 3x, because this doesn't say y equals. So we can put this into slope-intercept form. And then once it says y equals, now I can see the slope is -3, and I can work through this. You can also, of course, type this into Desmos and look at a picture and do the same thing. Find 2 points that lie on the line. This goes down 3 and across 1, which equals -3. And I can pick out my answer from there as well. And that's important when we have this type of question. Write the equation in slope-intercept form that passes through this point and is parallel to this one. So that was why I did talk about what the slope of this line is, because that's what we need to answer this question. Here's my point. We found out the slope was -3, and then you can just work through those 6 steps just like you did previously. So most of the work really was the setup from the last lesson, knowing those 6 steps. And today's lesson is really just knowing when it says parallel, it's going to be the same slope. And we just got to read out what the slope is going to be for that value. And that should do it for this video.